I could move to approve.
Okay. We have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, those meeting minutes are approved. Thank you for preparing the minutes. C2, this is the rescheduled meeting. It was on May 13th, rescheduled from April 22nd. We'll take a motion to approve those minutes. Those were attached with the agenda, unless anyone has any additions or corrections.
I move acceptance of the meeting minutes from May 13th.
You have a second?
I second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We will approve the minutes. Thank you for the preparation of the minutes, Carla and Tom. We'll move on to D, which is public input. We take public input at the beginning of the meeting, in person. I don't know if we have any public input. No, okay, just public attendance. The public is welcome, those watching online or watching after the fact. You can come to the meetings and give public input at the beginning of the meetings at about this time at every meeting. But since there is no public input, and I don't believe we received any email, you can email the board as well if you'd like to, and we can read your comments into the meeting or into the record as well. But without those being done and no one being present to input, we'll move on to E, which is unfinished business. We'll start with the TASER review. Deputy Chief Cervantes is here. I know everything was uploaded to the portal or SharePoint yesterday. The reports are there and the unredacted videos were there yesterday. I know Deputy Chief is going to provide a redacted presentation. Officer Cervantes, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Appreciate the time. So I have two things to cover today, TASER review and then the policy update, basically follow up from last meeting. But I'll start with the TASER review. Maybe. There we go. All right, so this incident occurred in February of 2025. The female victim was inside a residence on the phone with a health worker who relayed essentially that the victim was in fear for her life, that her partner had choked her and hit her. He would not let her clean herself or call 911. So officers responded to a suspected hostage situation involving a domestic relationship. This is the redacted initial encounter from one of the officers' body-worn cameras.
Savannah Police! Can I talk to you, man? Can we? Hey, no, it's cool. Okay. All right. Is there anyone else inside? I did hear a female say she was in there. Yeah, with the door. Can I talk to? You guys keep coming to my house and trying to attack me. You on the list? Nope. I'm not trying to attack you. I'm not trying to attack you. Hey! Whoa! Put the knife down.
All right. So as you could see there,
Savannah Police!
well,
Can I talk to you, man?
as you can see there, the individual was highly agitated, appeared to be in some form of mental distress. None of that negates the fact that we got the call from the female who was essentially being held hostage inside the residence, indicating that she had been battered. As officers tried to make contact and talk to him, he brandished the knife. In the video, I know it can be hard to see, so I still framed it and took a screenshot there, and then you can clearly see the knife. So as this was happening, one of our recruit cars was there, so that means somebody that was with a field training officer. So we had initially, I believe, 3 officers there. Additional officers came. They called for more officers, obviously, as the situation escalated. One of the things that we always try to do is have mass when possible. So mass is more officers to respond. In this case, we could hear the female inside talking, but we didn't know the status, as the officer indicated. So throughout the next approximately 15 to 20 minutes, officers continued to try to talk to the individual inside. The female who was inside at one point was actually, I believe, able to get a phone based on reviewing the footage. One of the sergeants tried to have it relayed to her, or tried to relay it himself, that we were telling her to get into a room and try to barricade it as best she could to protect herself, as he was, his attention was on the police at that point. Officers on the scene throughout multiple times tried to get him to drop the knife and to come outside. He refused. A plan was developed to create a distraction at the back door for a front door dynamic entry, utilizing mass, a shield, a taser, and lethal cover to address the threat the male posed to the victim. This is the view from the shield officer. He will go in after the officer with the RAM tool, which basically is the device that we use to force entry into a locked door.
The shield has a camera, or you're saying this is the body cam from the officer that's holding the shield?
Yep. The officer that has the shield.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. And later on in the presentation, you'll get to see actually the front of the shield. All right, so there was a lot that happened there. I wanted you guys to see it all the way through the first time. There were multiple taser deployments throughout this encounter that all happened very quick. It was very rapid. So now I want to go through it again from the shield view, and I say shield view, again to clarify, it's the officer that's holding the shield. It's his body-worn camera, and point out a few things as we go along. So they're stacking up one behind another, and what he's saying is shield in after the ram has been deployed. The shield will go in first. The shield is to create a barrier between the suspect and the officers. What you'll notice here coming up is that very, very shortly after the officers make entry, the subject approaches them. What you can't see clearly in this from this video footage is that the officers see that he still has the knife in his hand. They indicate based on the reports that he was swinging at them, and it's a clear attack. The officer uses the shield to create that barrier, and although he did have lethal cover up because of the tight quarters, because of the situation that he found himself in, he did not fire his weapon, although in this case, based on what he saw, I want to make it clear that this would have been a situation where lethal force and use would have been understandably reasonable in this situation. The sergeant that's behind him did have less than lethal cover, which was the taser. He deployed it 2 times using both of his cartridges towards the individual. Those were not effective. They did not actually complete the arc. There was no probe connection on both because as the individual attacked the officers, the sergeant who deployed both tasers, one lost a shot as he was pulling up, and then the other one, both probes did not make contact. So you can see the individual then retreat into the house.
So neither one of the probes connected in the doorway here?
Not that we believe. We believe that the only probe that made contact, or that at least it's indicated in the second sergeant's report, is there was one in his hip area.
Okay.
And we believe that's going to be from another taser deployment, which you'll see shortly.
Okay.
Officer Cervantes, can you explain maybe why the officer with the shield would have the firearm as opposed to having the taser? Wouldn't he have had a better chance of connecting or probing him with the taser, and maybe have one of the other officers with the firearm? And I know there was another officer that had a rifle. I mean, they were heavily armed. But if the idea would be to everyone come out of here in one piece, or wouldn't it make more sense to have a better shot with the taser at the front with the shield? Or
So in this circumstance, the officer that was at the front was not a supervisor, was not the sergeant. He didn't have the taser. And we
Right.
discussed that. He didn't have the taser, so what you're talking about then is taking the two.
you mean he wasn't trained to have the taser?
Yeah, he did not have a taser. He did
Oh,
not
I
have
see.
that
Okay.
piece of equipment. The sergeant was the second one that had the taser and
Right.
would be the supervisory role with the most experience. So having him go in number 2 to assess the situation, not to mention when we go into a situation like that, we don't know what we're going to be encountering. So in that case, as you guys can see, the taser was not effective. We always try to have less than lethal, but at the end of the day, somebody's exhibited the behavior this individual did, and he has a knife. It is not unreasonable to have lethal coverage along with the shield going in to make that first entry, because we don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, in this case, had the officer fired, I believe that it would have been reasonable given the totality of the circumstances. So that was the decision that was made at that time, and I understand it.
So the officer that was on the steps, was the one that actually deployed his taser?
The number 2, and you'll see his video
Okay.
a little bit later on.
Okay.
I
But
just
that's
wanna-
not the second one that was behind the officer with the shield. That was a total different,
No, I'm sorry, that was the second officer.
the one that went up the
Yep.
stairs. Okay.
So the one that goes first has the ram. He hits the door, moves out of the way. The second officer with the shield goes in with the shield. And then the third officer is the one with the sergeant, the one with the taser. So actually, for entry purposes, it would be shield, taser.
I just want to say, I think that from what I see here, I personally think that the officers entering did a really great job thinking quickly and not using lethal force, because that was a really scary situation that I just saw. And they totally didn't, which I think is great, you know, good for them, because that was fast thinking.
Well, thank you very much, and that's why having as many tools as we can available to us and the training that we do specifically related to situations like this with the shield, with whether it be officer down situations or any other type of situation that we're using a shield, it's putting our officers in that mindset, going through the training so they have the confidence to go through there and make whatever decisions that they make in that time, and that's where that trust aspect comes into play.
Is that the normal setup then, shield firearm as opposed to shield taser, or would there be a situation where they would change that?
Depending on the geography, depending on the layout, depending on what we know, I don't want to say typical or atypical, because each situation is unique and we have to take all factors into consideration.
Right. Well, I mean, because the plan, at least what the sergeant was saying, was they were going to distract him by knocking on the back door, and then the plan would have been, what, to get inside and subdue him inside and keep him from going back upstairs, or is that what the plan was?
We didn't know where he was at that time.
Okay.
The plan was developed, and it actually worked really well by knocking on the back door for that split second, because you saw how fast he got back to the front door.
Right.
He did go to the back door and like slam his fist. The officers that were on the back thought he was coming out of the back. So when they came in, the goal is to control the situation and find the victim. That's the goal. Now we have to, in order to keep her safe, we have to be able to make sure that the threat is neutralized.
Right.
So going in, we don't know if he's going to be upstairs at that point. We don't know if he's going to be in the bathroom. We don't know the layout even of that particular apartment. They had to go in blind, and depending on what they saw, if the victim would have been there, potentially hurt, going in, going past her, creating a barrier to get her out safely, and then addressing the threat, that's what they would have done. But it just depends. Each circumstance is unique. So as you could hear, I did a poor job of bleeping that part out, but the officer tells him, calls him out by name and says hands, I believe, and you heard his response. So clearly he was not willing to cooperate. So you'll notice the person that's coming in that has the hand on his back, he's going to go up the stairs. What I want you to pay attention to is the top of the stairs. That's the victim, and him addressing the victim.
But I just want to clarify, at this point, the man has not actually been struck by the taser? Or
No.
Okay,
It was not effective.
okay.
I can tell you that I have now been tased, and once that thing is effective,
Yeah, you're not
You-
running.
you're not,
probably. Yeah.
you'll know it, and you're straight down and locked up.
Okay.
So, no, it was not effective. It didn't complete the arc.
Wait, sir, you sit here. Stay there, stay there, stay there.
So the first sergeant that goes in, the one that deployed his tasers and now is out, indicates that he hears him in the bathroom. It ends up being a bathroom, and that he's there. So you'll see the second sergeant start to go up the stairs, and he does still have his taser out, as other officers have lethal cover.
Give me a shield. Shield up. Where's the shield? Shield. That's on. Shield the ram. You're good. You're good. You good? Yeah. You good, Dave? Yeah. Is that your?
All right, so there's a couple of things that happened there. One, the sergeant that noticed that he was in the bathroom said, hey, where's the knife? There's the knife. He sees it on the ground. They believe that that's the knife, but one of the reasons that I wanted you to see the entire video the first time was to show how many knives there were. Because if you continue watching later on, you'll notice that wasn't the knife. He still was armed once he was in the bathroom. They end up taking that knife out of the bathroom and handing it out.
Does the sergeant on the stairs, is he holding the taser and the rifle at the same time? Is
No,
that,
different hands.
right, but isn't there, some of the training says you're not supposed to do that because you don't want to confuse which hand you've got with the taser and which one you have with the firearm?
Well, there's always the possibility of sympathetic reflex as far as the training. We try not to go hands-on, but again, each circumstance is
No, but I
unique.
mean not having to at the same time. That we've reviewed other footage and it was another officer that was saying that you're not supposed to be doing that.
Yeah. There are exceptions for each case, and given this case, the sergeant that went in first depleted all of his taser cartridges. The next sergeant that was in was initially lethal cover with the rifle. He transitioned to a taser. Well, I would not have approved of him setting his rifle down on the ground. So maintaining control of the rifle and then having the
No, they were
taser out
both
as a
pointed at the
secondary.
same- They were both pointed at the same time, is what I'm saying.
He had it, from what I saw, and we can go back. Well, maybe.
I'm all right. He's bloody. I got him.
We can watch it again, playing all the way through. And to address that, just overall, he had to make that decision in that moment at that time, and he transitioned to a less lethal option as opposed, whether the rifle was sitting on the banister or pointed down, it was like that. And you hear the sergeant explain, I'm out of taser, and he responds, don't worry, I got you, brother. And he switches back to taser because he knows as the supervisor, he has others. So in this case, the options are keep the rifle with lethal cover, switch to a taser when you know you have others, and in that situation, if the guy would have came out with that knife, we'd be looking at a very different inquiry here. So I see what you're saying. However, given the totality of the circumstances, I thought what he did was completely reasonable, and there are exceptions that can be made for that type of situation.
I understand the switching between the two. And what I'm saying is I think he had both pointed at the bathroom for more than a time of just a switch. I think it was at the same time for a period of time, longer than just a transition. And that the question is, and I remember this from other taser videos, that it was an officer chasing after another individual. He had his firearm in one hand and the taser in the other. And that was, we were told that that shouldn't be done. So I understand switching, not putting it down. I think he had it on a strap or something like that.
So if your question and point is that it shouldn't be done, is that
Right,
that's what
yeah, I
I'm hearing?
mean, I think that the idea was, at least from what we were told with the training, was that you don't want to have a taser and a firearm pointed at the same time, because you may, you may
Sure.
lean towards, if you're right here, your dominant hand or something like that,
Yeah.
as opposed to pulling the taser when you meant to do the other or something like that.
Yes, it is. It's called sympathetic reflex, and that's something that ideally we would not like to happen. However, in the circumstances, it was dynamic, rapidly evolving, and the sergeant did what he had to do in order to transition at that time again, whether or not that rifle was pointed at the door. He made that decision. That was a quick decision. And is it ideal? Should it always happen? No. But given the totality of the circumstances with this case, I understand why he did what he did, and I think it was a good decision.
Can I, since we can't rewind, I just kind of want to go back to where we are in the video right now.
Sure.
And I noticed a few things. First of all, it seems to me like there's a lot of taser deployment and also mention of the guy being bloody, and I'm just kind of curious what happened there.
So that is very astute of you, and I'm happy that you pointed that out. That was one of the things that I wanted to point out as we go through this is as the sergeant enters, he indicates, I have him, he's bloody. I can tell you based on the evidence, based on the officers' accounts and the reports, that blood likely came from him striking his head on the shield as he attacked the shield, and the officer used the shield to create that barrier and that distance. And I'll show you how I know that later on. And the fact that he says that he's bloody, I didn't want anybody to think that the officers were in there hitting him, frustrated, upset with him, and pounding on him. As you can hear, they're giving him verbal commands over and over to put his hands behind his back. He's saying they're killing me, and they say, we're not killing you, we don't want to kill you.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because you were like in the middle of a play-by-play, and some of that was missed. So I'm just trying to like understand the number of taser shots that actually hit him, and also I guess I'm kind of wondering, is there any angle where we can actually see what happened in the bathroom?
No.
Very
So
unfortunate.
So that's the first. The first taser deployment was the two that missed. This one was one taser deployment, and you can hear it going off, but that taser deployment was also ineffective. I wouldn't say completely ineffective because it caused enough pause in the individual for the officers to go in and go hands-on.
Yeah, and then they're saying, we'll do it again, which implies
Absolutely.
that he felt something, I guess.
Well, you can hear it going off, and one of the probes made contact, not both of them. So what he was, I think, indicating to him, at least in that moment, is that I think he thought that both probes hit, and they were good. And the reason that he's saying that out loud is, for those of you that went through that taser training, you understand that if you're hands-on with an individual that has the 2 points of contact, if you're between that 2 points of contact, you're going to get electrocuted just like they would. So the reason that he is saying that out loud and yelling at him, telling them, is he's giving him that verbal warning, as well as telling the officers, hey, by the way, if he continues to struggle, he continues to resist, you guys need to get your hands off, because he was going to do it again. And if you notice, he didn't. He kept checking in on him, because even though the other officer was saying, you're fighting me, you're resisting, you're not giving me your arm, they had mass at that point to be able to get him back. And due to the tight quarters, it was very tight quarters, especially given the size of the individuals involved. And to your other point about it being unfortunate, it is unfortunate. However, if you notice, which you'll see later on in some of the other views, the sergeant that went in number 2 that deployed the taser, given the suspect's attack, his body camera falls off, and you'll just see it pointing straight up at the air. So yes, it is unfortunate, but by no means would I expect that sergeant to stop what he's doing in the middle to go back and get it or move. And the other one is behind a shield, which is, obviously for safety purposes. So yes, it is unfortunate. I looked at the other footage. There was no angle of an actual deployment, which you'll see because I have the other sergeant's footage that I'm going to show you guys as well.
Men back in, we're going forward, secure inside. somebody else good.
That's what I wanted to show you guys before, that the knife was still in the bathroom, that there were multiple knives.
The officer that actually deployed the taser in there is the one standing up. Wow.
Yep.
Check on her, please. Stop fighting! Hey, somebody, I'm gonna hit him again if he starts fighting you. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Put that on safety? Yeah. Stick it in your pocket. Put your left hand behind your back. You're gonna get it again if you don't let it stop. You let me know, I'll run him again. You're killing me. You're killing me. Put your hand behind your back. You're good, I got it. Have medical stuff on up here, guys? I got this hand covered. Give me your other hand. Give me your other hand. I can't move it, I'm telling you. I'm trying. What can you do? Good? Okay. Get up. Killing me. I just want to move. Put your right arm behind your back. Now. Oh, I can't do it. Pull your arm behind your back. Give me your hand. This is gonna have them killing me. We're not gonna kill you. Stop pulling away from me. You're pulling away from me. You're killing me.
All right, so two things I want you to notice. One, curious about the movement. She was trying to get 2 pairs of handcuffs, given this individual's size. Sometimes we will use 2 pairs of handcuffs to get them on. The other thing that I want you guys to notice is that they're all communicating and talking with each other. From this officer's body-worn camera footage, you can see where he's at inside the bathroom, and you can see that one arm's behind him, the other arm was in front. But the important part is what she's communicating to the other officers. She's saying, he's got nothing in his hand, there's nothing in his hand, there's nothing in his hand. So they can't see that, but from her vantage point, she can, and she's relaying that to the other officers to let them know that hand's free, it doesn't have a weapon in it, because these types of situations can go several ways. And again, I agree with you in your assessment earlier. I'm very proud of these officers, the restraint and the composure, what they did by handling that, in particular with the initial officer going in hands-on when the door opens.
Yeah, I think they did a good job because I feel like so many times we see that exact situation, especially where they're like, maybe you could say whatever you want about lethal force and whether or not, but the guy had a gun in his hand. There was lethal force. Nobody used it, and they very quickly used tasers instead, and I think that that's great.
I agree. Thank you. All right. So the other videos are going to be shorter because we've already seen all of it, but I wanted to give you at least the 2 views from the people who actually deployed the tasers.
Join us.
So that was the number 2. Sergeant, the reason I put 2 on that one is because he deployed both of his cartridges.
How often do the cameras fall off? Because I feel like I've seen this happen all the time, and it's, like, is there a better way to fashion a clip or something?
They're working on it.
Okay.
So we have magnetic and we also have clips, but when you're in a fight, it's violent, it's quick, it's hard, and things happen.
Yeah.
So we have magnetic and we have the clip ones. So the ones that they have available to us, we use. The magnetic ones are, I mean, they're super magnetic.
Yeah.
But, I mean, officers' clothing gets ripped, different things. So, yes, it does happen, and I think the manufacturers are aware, and if they could make one that will never fall off, I'm sure that company would make a lot of money off of that. So,
I got taser. Sorry. Go. Sir, she's in here. Stay there. Stay there. Stay there. Shield up. Shield and ram. I'm not a taser. You're good. You're good. I got you, brother. Did anybody get hit with a knife? There's the knife, right? Good. Shield and ram. Yeah. Hands up. Taser on. Get him. Stay on.
well, that's even better, because he did put it down.
Well, but he had him on at the same time, and the policy 304.3D says officers should not hold both a firearm and a CED, which is the generic term for taser, at the same time, is what it says. So, and I don't see any exceptions to that. So, I mean, obviously, he used it correctly, but it's somewhat concerning, especially given, as you've described, the scenario here, that things can go sideways fast, and that would be concerning. What's the purpose of the rifle in a scenario like this? You said it was close quarters. I mean, is that, you know, I'm not a firearms expert, but
He is.
it seems like it would be something that maybe a longer range kind of a weapon, right, as opposed to a,
No, not right. But I see what you're saying, and the guy that actually is going in with that, he is a master firearms instructor. He is on our Metro team. He is a taser instructor. When he's going through that door, he doesn't know what he's going to encounter. Stopping power, right now we carry 9 millimeters as sidearms. Depending on where he was at, a rifle could provide more stopping power, could potentially go through something if he was wanting to. If he saw somebody retreat with a knife up in the air and he starts going, he would still be authorized. So the
or a
logic,
door or a wall, is what you're saying? Or,
potentially, if they were in that hallway and he was going up like this and we don't know where the victim is, he's coming in with that rifle, even when he goes at an elevated position, having that there and not needing it is better than needing it and not having it. And that's the same way that we do with most of the tools. As you can see, he does transition, and I'll pull up as we go later on into the policy exactly where the exception is, because it's not in that. The exception is in the policy to begin with, saying policy can be deviated from. And it's at the very beginning and applies to the whole thing.
I got taser. Sorry. Go. Sir, she's in here. Stay there. Stay there. Stay there. Shield up. Shield and ram. I'm not a taser. You're good. You're good. I got you, brother. Did anybody get hit with a knife? There's the knife, right? Good. Shield and ram. Yeah.
Both hands on the taser. I think he didn't set it down. He had it slung. Yeah. So he moves, transitions.
yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I'm not disputing that.
Yeah.
Saying at this point and also when he deploys the taser,
So there was no officer opening that door. He opened the assailant or whatever, for term reason, he opened the door.
yes, that's correct.
All right, I was just trying to see
Big-
that. Thanks.
Time and distance, we've talked about that, right? So we know that he retreated back inside. The sergeant makes a very fast assessment after hearing his movement, knowing that he's in there, and everybody focuses on that door. If you'll hear what they say, they're trying to use the tools that we have available to us and the way that we train. They're calling for the ram up again, and they're calling for the shield. So they're trying to develop a plan to go in as safely as possible. he stops that when he opens the door, and that's where the sergeant makes the decision to go hands-on and address him at that point.
I got taser. Sorry.
All right, so this is the shield photo, and why is this important? It's important because there's blood on the shield. That shield didn't make it back there. The blood is likely from that initial encounter. The shield goes down. They pick it up to try to get it back to the door. You can see that's the shield. This thing that is, actually, I don't know if you can see you can't see my
But you're
cursor.
saying like at the initial entry and the doorway is probably where this happened?
Where he got the cut over his eyes, that over
Right,
his
and
eye that had the blood.
Presumably where he's talking about bleeding was at the initial entry into the home.
Yes.
Okay.
That's on the outside of the shield?
Yep.
What's the thing that's connected to the cable?
I'm sorry, not a camera, a light.
Oh,
Well, and the officer who was holding the shield later talks about he got hit by the shield.
Yeah.
Because the guy impacted the shield. So I think that also, it's likely that he ran into the shield.
And later on, and you're not going to see it in this presentation, but the paramedics look at it, and they see that on the individual, there are what they call, I think the paramedic indicated that they were a skin tear, not a laceration. It wasn't from the knife, but on the individual's arm. And then the blood that was on the individual came from a small, I think the paramedic said, a centimeter or two or 3 centimeter cut above his eye, which would be consistent with that initial encounter at the door. All right, the disposition on this case, there were multiple charges. Charges 2, 3, and 4 are domestic battery, unlawful restraint, aggravated battery to a PO. And the court indicated that the people have proven the defendant's guilt, and the defendant has established mental disease and defect, found not guilty by reason of insanity. The defendant was ordered an inpatient evaluation at the Department of Human Services to get the help that he needed. One thing that I wanted to point out and say it verbally to everybody on this board is I specifically chose not to show photos of the victim for her sake. But interviews were conducted with the victim later on, and those of you that seen the unredacted videos saw the bruising, the amount of bruising on her arms, neck, head, and the cut to her arm. So that's what she was enduring in there. And I want to make sure that you guys are aware of that, and that I said it at least, because regardless of whatever was going on with her, we have to think of the victim in this situation and stop potentially whatever violence could have come her way, or additional violence could have come her way. Do you guys have any questions for me on any of this?
was the call made, in the reports it said someone from the hospital called, was that for the subject, or was that for the woman in the house? That, like, when did the police
The
know
victim.
that was her
So the
Health
victim was
care worker?
healthcare worker, and I don't know, and it didn't explain, but for whatever reason, she was luckily able to make that call, whether he let it make because it was medical, and whether he was standing right there, which I can assume based
Yeah.
on the other information. But she ultimately relayed what was going on, and I think in one of the reports it indicated that she was, he wouldn't allow her to, I don't want to say anything that would be too private for the victim, but that he took the phone away, and then the line went dead. So she was able to make this information known to whoever it is, the healthcare worker. My understanding is that that information then was relayed to MetCAD 911 Center, who dispatched us to what they knew at the time.
I think she mentioned in the interviews on the camera that, like, he had stopped using his medication, and so I was it wasn't clear as to if the call was made to check up on him or to check up on her. I mean, I think ultimately, you know, we're dealing with another vulnerable population. And, you know, the intervention that was done here by the police, you know, they were restrained enough to use the tasers. It seems like, you know, a week ago, if someone would have intervened, you know, we may have not been in this situation at all. But, you know, I think what they did was, I mean, it's you know, whether the policy allows it or not is another story, I think. You know, we don't comment on whether or not in a specific instances within policy or not. I mean, the Lexapol manual is, and we discussed this, I think, the last time about its usefulness, and is, I think, debatable as far as who it's protecting and who it's not. But, you know, the restraint shown here by the officers to make everybody come out still alive is commendable in this scenario, I think.
I think they did a great job. I have one question about and so I'm fairly new to this board, and so I was wondering, I know that we only just got access to the unredacted versions yesterday, and I personally hadn't had time to review them. I'm not sure if that's typical or if we normally have more time to review things. I guess the reason why I'm mentioning it is because I also do think that the officers here, from what we have seen, did a really, really good job. My concern, I guess, is that this is someone that obviously has a mental health issue, and obviously de-escalation is very, very important. And I know that the officers were there for a long time, so I assume that they tried many de-escalation techniques, but from the redacted version that I saw here, I only got to witness some of the officers laughing, I presume, at the man, which obviously, especially if someone has mental health problems, isn't probably super great. So I just wanted to say that. Obviously, I haven't watched the full unredacted, and my main question is, do we normally get like more time to view it? Because that doesn't seem like a lot of time.
I can tell you yesterday that we started early in the morning trying to get these videos pulled. I thought that they had been pulled already. I will do better in the future. That's on me. But these videos are long. It takes a long time. There were 6 or 7, I believe, officers on the scene. Each one of them were on the scene for varying amounts of time. That's a lot of footage. To get that footage downloaded did take some time, and I understand where you're coming from, and I will do better on that in the future to make sure that you guys have a little bit more time with those videos.
Great. I mean, just mostly because of like offering input and like being able to see it is important. But personally, I think that was a really great job that those officers did, and that like that was a really scary situation. And sort of to speak of the officer on the stairwell, like I can imagine myself in a position where, you know, the main guy like runs into the room. We don't know what room it is. We don't know if there is a gun in there. And then, you know, sort of just trying to make sure that everyone is safe. And you have a moment where you're like, okay, now I have both of these in my hand, lethal and non-lethal. And then you're like, oh, I shouldn't do that. And then he puts it away. You know what I mean? But just like kind of in the moment, like you don't know if that guy is going in there. He already had a weapon, and he could be going in there to get a gun. You don't know. So.
Is there a different protocol when you know prior to going that there is the victim or the person has a mental diagnosis? Like if you know going to Fred Flintstone's house that you know Fred every time has this mental disease, you know that when you get the call, is the protocol still the same, or is it still different? Like if you had known prior to that this perpetrator had this mental disease, would that have changed anything?
Yes, I think that it absolutely, it changes the officer's approach. One of the things that Mr. Allegretti mentioned was, had we had intervention sooner, and to your point about the laughing, that was one of the things. One of the officers who was on scene had just been there dealing with him, not for a criminal, but for check welfare. Didn't have enough to do an invol, because we can't just say somebody's in a state and unless they're posing a danger that we have to be able to articulate to themselves or to somebody else. We can't just take them and lock them up. The officer that was laughing, part of that was he was there dealing with the guy, and I don't think it was in the sergeant's videos and the unredacted ones, but once he gets into ambulance and he's in a full state, you can tell at that point he was rambling, it was incoherent talk, but he did recognize that officer who laughed and was saying basically like, this guy, he's not gonna but you can tell the officer still tried to, hey, it's cool, man, can you come out and talk to us? And what he was, I think, in jest about was, this is an assumption partly on my part, but it was, I told you guys this guy's not, but he wasn't that volatile, I guess, before, but they comment back and forth to one another, the officer that was there before, as well as that individual in the ambulance. He's like, I was just talking to you for 40 minutes a couple days ago, and me and you were friends. And now, and he's like, oh, I remember you, but then he goes off on him because he was in that mental state. Yeah.
I reviewed the 2 videos we had last night. I mean, the officers were out there for a good hour, I think, before they go in. At one point, someone tells them to turn off the ambulance sirens coming in, and the officers radio fire to do that because they said he was going to freak out. So I think they were trying to accommodate his whatever mental stresses he was going through at the time. So I mean, they were attempting to do that, but
Yeah, I think you guys did a great job.
Well, thank you. I agree, and I'm very proud of the guys on this one. Any more questions about this?
I guess I have a few reactions that I would share. One, I thought that was interesting in the full video, that we have there's 2 sergeants. I believe there's the one, and then he calls for the backup of the other guy, the 2 who shot the tasers. And I thought it was interesting and maybe worth noting that they had 2 very different interpretations. And I think when we say, like, what would a reasonable officer think or act in a circumstance, I thought it was interesting that they're both reasonable officers making kind of reasonable assessments. But the first guy, I would say I kind of related more to how he responded, because they were talking to the woman through the window, and she was like, well, I'm upstairs, and he's downstairs, and, so they were separated. And so that first sergeant kind of, I think he was using time and space in, what I think, to me seemed reasonable. I think when the other officer, and I think taking the time to really, like, prep the other officers, okay, you're going to be SHIELD, you're going to be RAM, you're going to be less than lethal, you're going to be lethal. And I think that there are things that I appreciate about both leadership styles, but it was interesting to see both, because when the other guy came on site, he's like, oh, they're separated, we got to move fast. You guys to the back door, and we're going in. And he grabbed the, rifle, and they, went for it. And I think that probably somewhere, like, halfway in between those 2 styles might have been ideal. But anyways, I just thought it was interesting to see kind of that leadership. I had the same thought about the rifle. I did not understand in such a small space how that would be helpful, and it seemed like a potential liability. And I think if there'd been maybe a little bit more clarity around who was the less lethal, who was the lethal, if the person with the shield had felt they had enough cover to have 2 hands on the shield, they might not have gotten hit in the head because they had the 2 hands. And then I think that it just goes probably without saying, but I thought the whole situation was really sad, especially as the woman said, hey, yeah, we talked to, I don't know if it was a healthcare professional or a parole officer who had noticed that the fellow had been off of his medication and didn't seem well, and that the officer had done the wellness check. And I just hope that as a community, we'll continue to, have more opportunities for options that aren't, like, you don't have to get to that point where it's an involuntary and everybody's in a dangerous circumstance. Because, felt the sadness of the woman too, that she was like, I don't want to make this any worse for him, because she certainly had been through a lot, but also, clearly wanted him to be well. And this wasn't him. So I hope not the responsibility of the police, but I hope we can avoid you guys having to be in this circumstance and take these kind of risks if we can have some earlier interventions. So anyways, those are my reactions.
And I think those are great points that you bring up. I think there's some training points there, obviously. I know that afterwards they debriefed and you could hear them discussing some of the things and how that could have been different. So every situation we learn from, but ultimately very proud of the way that they did handle it going in, and it led to a successful outcome with nobody dying, nobody being hurt. This could have been so much worse. And so I definitely hear what you're saying. And yeah, I'm grateful for the feedback.
Any other comments? All right. Deputy Chief Cervantes, thanks again for preparing the presentation and the videos. We appreciate the time it takes to get this ready for us and to field our questions. And I'm sure we'll see you soon.
I'm not done.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. You're right.
You're just trying to kick me out.
You're as soon as now. Sorry.
Me and you
E2, right.
living
We're going to
together.
move
We're out
forward
now.
to. We're not trying to get rid of you.
That's all right. So would you like me to continue?
Yeah,
on
let's
with
move
the
to
policy?
E2. Sorry.
All right. All right, so there were a couple questions, a couple things that I definitely wanted to address. One of the questions that you had, Mr. Allegretti, was about vehicle insurance and whether or not our provider requires us to provide them with the standard operating procedure, UPD policy. Based on my conversations with Public Works and Finance, that is not required. So all the vehicles are covered under a fleet policy. One of the things that I want you guys to understand that I heard you last week, and that we took meaningful steps to make sure that this was done, was the policy manual for the public. So if you notice, there's the link. It is now up on the website. It is the redacted version. That was a lot of work that went into it by Lisa Curtis, so giving her a specific shout out, as she was the one that led the charge on the redaction and making sure that that got online. So now that is available to the public. The other part that I wanted to discuss with you guys was we talked about civilian participation in portions of the policy review process. And I can tell you again, the chief and I have talked about that, Deputy Chief Mikulik as well. The chief and the entire command staff support that idea. Conversations have also been had between myself and HREO Director Boyd on the potential structure, approval process, participant selection criteria, and what that would look like as far as civilians. So details are still being worked out. The goal is to include objective community representatives who can provide meaningful feedback and strengthen the collaboration process. So I didn't forget about that. We're not, oops, apologize. We're just not at a point where things have been finalized. The last
You might want to
item,
hit the display or the presentation button, because we can see your notes.
that's fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm transparent. Yeah. We mentioned use of force in 1989 case, Graham v. Connor, and what that foundational case law as it applied to use of force exhibited. And I 100% agree that that standard has been the foundation and that it is from 1989, but to the point that we were discussing last time. One of the specifics cases, Barnes versus Felix, 2025. The courts are always looking at specific cases. They're evolving. That's one of the great things, in my opinion, about the Constitution is we recognize that things can change, that we can evaluate them, and we can move on to make changes as needed. The police department, as you can see from my notes, UPD policy training, legal updates are not based solely on that 1989 case. Officers receive updates based on new case law, state law changes, evolving best practices, ILETSB requirements, and contemporary training standards, such as Barnes versus Felix, and is just one recent example of that ongoing evolution. Furthermore, and an example to law and how things have changed for the better, is the duty to intervene, which is now state law, that officers not only are required to know, but we take it a step further at the Urbana Police Department by enabling the ABLE training. So that's active bystander law enforcement training. So we're teaching our officers to intervene before a situation escalates out of control, and that they have the ability to do that throughout. So I definitely wanted to touch on that again, and I know I told you I would in the last meeting. As far as the process, I'm going to hope this works. All right, sweet, you guys can see it. You said you didn't see any exceptions, and I just wanted to make it clear that we do have this policy deviation and that we
Sure.
can, well, let me finish.
Yeah.
That we can deviate from policy, and whether or not it was within policy at the time, this dictates exactly why. Policies do not exist for every situation encountered by employees, nor are they applicable to every operation or situation. Ideal versus practical, rapidly evolving, Graham v. Connor, that's where we go from.
Sure, I think that's the critique of this particular company, in that they rely too much on Graham v. Connor, and Graham v. Connor allows for, any deviation, or if there's an exception, a catch-all exception for the entire manual, what's the point of having a policy, I guess would be the counter to that. And, there isn't a specific exception to having a taser and a firearm at the same time. And I think a general exception wouldn't trump a specific rule saying you shouldn't do that. Now, obviously, nothing happened here, and that's good, and no one's saying that, that's a bad thing. But, the review is of the taser deployment, and I think just, maybe some follow-up on making sure that those things don't happen, because this is now the second time I've seen this happen in videos that have been presented to us. So I would be concerned if it's happening more often, or in times that we haven't seen it, especially in a case like this where what's really at fault here is this person had a mental defect. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Obviously something should have happened a week before, and that's not on the department, but, if we have enough of these corners that we cut, it could be a problem.
When you say we, I'm sorry, who are you referring to? In what corner specifically?
Well, the two holding the rifle and the taser at the same time. There's the policy says you shouldn't do that. You're pointing to the general exception, which, I think is problematic, but, it allows the department to say we're within policy because we have this catch-all exception, which is Lexipol's design, not necessarily the department's, but it's the one that we're following.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack. You said a lot of things there. One, that it was the policy, but it's the review of the taser, but you bring the policy into it as far as use of force. So that's one thing that I absolutely want to address. If we could write a policy that covered every situation all the time if you could do that, you would be a very rich man.
Well, we have one. We have a 600-page document, and we have a specific policy section that says not to do that. So that's an issue, and I don't think pointing to our general exception of time and circumstance and things are moving very fast allows us to deviate from a specific policy point that says not to do that. So again, nothing happened, and that's great. This isn't the first time I've seen it, and so, you know, it's a concern that I would have that
Absolutely.
in seeing these videos, so.
Sure, and I wanted.
And again, I'm not
sure-
detracting from the way that this
Absolutely
went
not.
out. It happened, I think, about as well as it could have.
One of the things that you said was Lexipol, and this is the way Lexipol designs it. Lexipol is pulling this information from the United States Supreme Court, from cases in court, and not only the Urbana Police Department or Lexipol, this is the national standard. So again, whether you agree with that or not, what I'm trying to relay to the board is that we can't see every situation happening, and that while generally and ideally there's situations that we would not want our officers to put themselves in for all the reasons. These are rapidly evolving, that is based on case law. And that's why I believe that the sergeant did what he did in those circumstances. And we have to trust at a certain level that they go in with that training in their mindset and with the best outcome in mind. And I think that's exactly what happened in this situation. So I will stand by it as long as I wear a badge, and past that, we have to have trust in our officers, and that's partly the reason that we have that deviation in there. And it's reasonableness that is the key, and what is reasonable. And in this case, what would we have had him do? Well, I can't have both at this time. I don't know what I'm going to encounter, so I better keep my rifle. He was the one that was in the elevated position that had the best vantage point. And it worked out because of his training, because of the reasonableness of the situation, and because he took all those things into account. So again, at a certain point, we have to be able to trust our officers, and I think our officers do a fantastic job of that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of not trusting. I think, you know, we're looking with hindsight is 2020. I guess I would say I think it probably would have been a little easier for him and probably worked out a little better if he'd left the rifle in the car. He still would have had a firearm. It was a very short range. He could have switched then from the firearm into the holster to the, you know, I think it would have been a little easier. But that is hindsight, that is, you know, and I think it would have been more within policy. I don't think we're trying to say it's, you know, the policy is a important guideline. The totality of circumstances is always there, but, you know, it's worth noting. And then I really appreciate you putting the policy on the website, and I know that we will all certainly use it and appreciate the time that went into the redaction, because it's helpful for us to understand. If it's not too much trouble,
Yeah.
I have one more little website request, which I noticed that there's a use of force page on the website, which I think is very useful and nice. And if we could take that one chapter out, that I know like NAACP, ACLU, UPD did a ton of work to update this recently, I think in 2020. And I think it'd be nice to have just even that small section pulled out, because I think people would, you know, enjoy understanding those intentions and might, you know, find it a little harder to dig into the whole policy. But it's just if it's not too much trouble.
Where would you want to see that? It's
The
because that use of force has
page.
that. Okay. If
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure
Question.
exactly, but we can talk offline if you'd like, or you can send me an email of what specifically you're talking about and where you would.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I will
'Cause I was
definitely.
looking for it the other day, and I could dig it up here, but I thought the community, I think, would benefit from having it there.
Yeah.
I'll shoot you a link.
Sure.
Thank
And
you.
I
Thanks
will
for
bring it up
making that up.
with the chief. I'm not making any promises, but I will definitely bring it
Yeah,
up.
no big deal either way, but I think it'd be handy.
All right, thank you.
Just a small point of information. On the policy that you pulled up and showed us, policies is actually spelled wrong in the second sentence. It's polices. So I thought you guys might want to correct that.
That checks out.
Sorry, I'm a little bit anal retentive about that stuff. so.
All right, Mr. Allegretti, we're going to agree with each other. Lexipol's not perfect.
I agree with you. Any other comments or Anything else about use of force? Okay. I think now I can thank you, Officer Cervantes, for being here and preparing. We appreciate you
Yeah,
being
thanks for
here,
your
and we'll
time.
see you soon.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, we'll move to E3. This is, we'll entertain a motion to move to closed session. This is to discuss the appeal that has been pending. We've communicated with the complainant. We've made him aware of the seeking additional time to discuss, specifically at this meeting. So I believe we're within ordinance there, but in order to discuss that, we do need to go to closed session. So I would entertain a motion to go to closed session to discuss the appeal.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
I think we need to take a roll call vote for this, correct? Yes. So, Tom, if you could assist?
Katrina Kindle,
Yes.
Peggy Patton,
Yes.
Renee Nicholson,
Yes.
Jane McClintock.
Can I abstain?
Okay, and Tony Allegretti.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Okay, so I believe the motion carries, so we'll move to closed session, and then we'll resume here after discussion. Okay, let's call the meeting back. So we're going to move, I think, first and foremost, move to come out of closed session. We need a roll call vote for that. So Tom, if you can assist with that.
So you want a motion first?
Yeah, oh, sorry, right. I guess I need to entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
I move we come out of closed session.
Second.
We'll take a roll call vote.
Katrina Kindle,
Yes?
Peggy Patton,
Yes.
Renee Nicholson,
Yes.
Jane McClintock,
Yes.
Melissa Stratton,
Yes.
Tony Allegretti.
Yes. Okay, the motion carries, so we are now out of closed session. We are back in the city council room. We spent the past about an hour, I think, discussing agenda item E3 regarding the appeal of a complaint. Without going into the details, we did discuss this with city officials, and we were prepared to have a vote. So the vote is going to be whether or not to hear the appeal. A vote for yes means you want to hear the appeal. A vote for no means you do not want to hear the appeal. We're not going to discuss the reasons for it. It's just going to be a straight up or down vote. I think everyone's on board with what's going on. Does anyone have any questions about the vote or what we're voting on? Okay, with no questions, I'll take a motion on the vote to hear appeal number AP 2025-07. Does anyone want to move to vote?
I move that we take a vote on said appeal.
I second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Tom?
Katrina Kindle,
No?
Peggy Patton,
No.
Renee Nicholson,
No.
Melissa, Jane McClintock,
Yes.
Melissa Stratton,
Yes.
Tony Allegretti.
Yes. So we're at a tie. The motion does not carry, so we will not hear the appeal of appeal AP 2025-07. Okay, we'll move on to the annual report, which is E5. Sorry, that might be me. The final, or the current version, I think possibly the final version has been circulated. I think everyone submitted the corrections or comments that they made in the time that we discussed at the last meeting. I don't know if we are discussing anything else, or, I mean, everyone has a copy of it, I believe, correct? I think, Jane, I know you discussed in an email about maybe doing another working session. I don't know if that's what we want to do, or do we want to just
I
vote
would
to?
move that we vote to approve it.
Okay. Unless anyone has any other.
But I'm also happy to discuss it, the length that anyone wants to.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
think we had really good conversation about it last time, and I trust that that any, changes that we talked about were put into place, and if that's the case, I think it's good to go.
Okay. Yeah, no, sorry, I'll get
Yeah,
to
but
it.
no, I welcome any discussion too.
No, I guess not really discussion, but just a comment. Jane, thank you very much for taking this bull by the horns and getting it whipped into shape, and everyone else for contributing, for reading through it with a fine-tooth comb. I think it's a very good document. It encompasses a lot, but I think, honestly, it's probably better having a multi-year report with a lot of context to look at, and hopefully it achieves the goals that we want it to achieve. And yeah, I'm happy to put it to a vote if we could get a motion to approve the annual report from 2020 to 2025.
I guess, one thing, Peggy, that I just wanted to check in, did you have some process? And I don't know that we need to consider it before we approve it, but you had some suggestions for how we would publish it, and if,
The one thing that we talked about last time that I felt strongly about, and I think we agreed to, was to send the final draft to the Urbana, to the police department, to Chief Boone, before it was made public. Largely, well, because it contains a lot of information, but mostly, it's the first time, to my knowledge, that we've included recommendations. And they say a lot, and I think it's just fair and reasonable to share that with the police force before it goes public, with an invitation to them that perhaps we can talk about these recommendations and how we might move ahead on them. So that, I think that was the process, maybe.
yeah, I mean, and in some ways, we've put this in our packet, it is somewhat public. I mean, like, if, you know, I certainly would say, hey, well, should we vote to approve it? And then, to your point, Peggy, if we wanna, or I don't know, if Carla wants to share it, or Tony to Chief Boone, and then we send it to City Council and the mayor as per the ordinance in 1 week, would that satisfy your,
Because that's not even
Desire.
public. I mean, sending it to the mayor and city council, and then we can post it later, I think, on the website, if that's maybe the public component you're thinking about. or-
Right, well, yeah, once it goes to the city council, those
There's a
packets are public.
process for it, and we can discuss that once
Okay.
we actually have it approved
Okay.
by the board, an approved report
Okay.
that we're all comfortable with, and then we can take the next necessary steps that are outlined within the ordinance, and then publishing, once everything has gone through, because nothing can be published until the council approves it, and then we'll look at that. And then what Jane had said, that would be a discussion for you guys to have once we have an approved document where it moves outside of the ordinance.
Okay.
okay, super. Then I would move that we approve the latest draft of the annual report.
Second.
And as part of discussion, maybe, I just wanted to ask, did you see the
Yes,
last
about the
part?
2 ward maps.
Yes. And
Yeah, my
you-
intention really was to only include the historical one, but I think your solution is super, and thank you for catching that. Because I put the wrong ward map in, and Tom caught it. So, but I think as long as we have them both, it's clear in the text of the body of the report that,
Right.
that we used the 2016. So in some ways, the 2024 is not very salient, but it also, I don't think it hurts to include it.
Will those be adjusted so that the entire wards are available, or just, because they're both kind of cut off?
Oh,
Like, my neighborhood is partially there, but it's not even labeled.
oh, true, maybe it didn't fit.
Yeah, so it kind of cut off, and then it looks like we've got, both maps look cut off.
We-
I don't know, could we shrink that?
We can work on the technology part of it.
Thank
Okay,
you.
to shrink it so
Yeah.
it all fits.
I've
yes.
noticed it's not easy to get either the ward maps or the school district maps. Like, I have a heck of a time even seeing our neighborhood on any of those, so, yeah.
Oh, that's a good catch, yeah.
Because it's
So-
probably.
so
I
then
just
do we-
noticed that.
I think that then in that case, I think it might be, make more sense just to go back to including the 2016. And I could label it with the same kind of appendix style that I had done for the other appendices. But does that mean that we have to wait for the next meeting to approve our?
I think
report?
this is a technicality.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I
in-
could fix
Yeah,
that.
if you look
Yeah.
at this, even like Stone Creek is not included at all.
Yeah,
Myra
no,
Ridge
that-
isn't on there.
That's a good point.
And I think when we started sending emails back and forth, you could see it, but when the copier actually printed this
Yeah.
version, I don't think it,
Oh, okay.
I think
Well,
that's where the change
Yeah.
went, yeah. Good catch.
I think that's just
think it's
a
like a
simple
print setting.
technicality, though.
Yeah.
It should not,
You don't want to finalize it this way, you want to correct it
Yeah.
before, but you can vote to say with that.
With
with
that
corrected
correction,
maps.
yeah.
Correct. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. I move that we vote to approve the annual report draft as included in the packet of this meeting.
Seconded.
With the
Oh,
exception
with
of
the
the
exception
formatting
of
issues.
formatting the ward map from 2016.
Seconded.
Let's do a roll call vote for this.
Katrina Kendall,
Yes.
Peggy Patton,
Yes.
Renee Nicholson,
Yes.
Jane McClintock,
Yes.
Melissa Stratton,
Yes.
Tony Allegretti.
Yes. Okay, motion carries, the report is approved, and then we'll yeah, again, thank you, Jane, we'll discuss
Well, yeah, thank you, everyone.
dissemination over a cookie, yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Tom.
All right, let's move on to E5, or I'm sorry, F1. This is new business, F1, this is the quarterly reports. They were attached to the packet. These are going to, this goes to the mayor, I believe, correct? I guess,
I believe it goes to the city council
or
and
city
the
council,
mayor.
I'm sorry, yes.
And the mayor.
I think the only thing I had an issue with was maybe some of the discussion points about what was discussed in the appeal. I don't know if we need to include that.
Yeah, maybe it's not, and yeah, I don't know, we should keep it in there, but I feel like this is the thing we've been up to, so I.
Yeah, no, I'm not,
Yeah,
I'm
but
not
no,
saying it's wrong, I was just
Fair
saying,
enough,
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure if it's right.
Yeah. I don't know if I've seen a quarterly report prepared before either.
I don't believe so. I
Yeah.
did do some historical checking, and what I found was an annual report that looked very similar to our spreadsheet, and that was what was submitted.
Okay,
And so I think this group has the latitude, as long
wanna
as you're including all of the key points that the ordinance says should be in there. I think how you design it is up to you. And I looked at Jane's reports, and it appeared to have all the elements in it.
yeah. No, yeah, it definitely does. I think based on our conversations in closed session, that maybe some of the language about the third appeal that's pending, we may want to remove, just in order to, because I don't know if this becomes a public document.
It'll become public, I
Yeah.
believe, once.
Yeah, and that may be privileged.
Right.
So.
That's why that was the only caution I had, but I mean, all we need to do is give them the numbers, and I think
Yep.
that's maybe all we need to provide, and not anything else, so.
So any motion would be to approve it with those corrections.
Right, and I was talking, saying this is a second quarterly report, or the first and second, and the quarter doesn't end until June 30th. I mean, it is, we still have a
We
few
still have a
more
week.
days. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there'll be other things to add, but we might want to
It's something we
wait
could delay, till the next meeting
Until
to
it's-
vote on.
And also historically, I found they had a schedule of when the quarterly reports were supposed to
Okay.
be submitted. I think they did it at the last week of the month after the quarter. But, you
Okay.
know, as long
Okay.
as you're within,
So
But, yeah, I
and
mean,
you can vote to, determine when that should be submitted by what date, I believe, or the council we could ask council for guidance.
yeah, but Peggy, I think to your point, we are a little premature, because there's still
yeah.
6
I
days
mean, we won't
left.
meet, and this body won't meet again till August, and I hate to hold it up that long, but,
Well, but that will still be earlier than the first quarterly report.
well, that's true, that's true, that's true. Well, and I had asked Carla to look at it, because I thought, again, thank you, Jane, for taking care of this, but I thought we should follow at least some formatting that's been done historically, so we could compare apples with apples, and to find that there hadn't been quarterly reports. I knew there hadn't been in my 4 years here, but apparently there hasn't been. So.
Yeah, I
if-
was
if-
thinking it's also a good sort of a way for us to kind of keep up with the annual report throughout the year, so that we're not having a rush of work, come January.
Right. And so maybe a process for how to keep that up to date, maybe, it shouldn't always fall on
Yeah,
Jane's
I was
shoulders.
gonna mention, since not everything falling on Jane's shoulders, if I don't want you to have to default to being the person that's doing these reports, so I wanna offer myself, I can help you if you wanna work together at least, because obviously you've made this, and this is really nice, and so, I have free time to help.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And I think my request to everyone, because this report, I just took the tracking spreadsheet, which I have put in a copy of it at least, which is probably not great that it's in multiple places, but I'd be happy to discuss where it should be. But in the 2026, that just has 2026, so that, as Carla posts complaints or appeals and we go look at them and read through them, if we could all just check that tracking spreadsheet and make sure that we're in agreement, because I think the one thing that is like a little bit subjective, and I think having everyone's mind on it would be really great, is what is the concern? What is the person expressing, what is their concern? And then just double checking, demographics and officers and stuff. But I think that or if you're the person who gets to it first, feel free to fill it all in. But then I think it's quite easy to put together the quarterly reports, because it's populating those charts sort of as we fill in. So I don't think there's much to it. And as long as we keep that tracking spreadsheet up to date, and as you mentioned, Carla, we could just give them the tracking spreadsheet as long as it's up to date.
Yeah.
But I think making it a little more readable is probably helpful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe 2 or 3 of us who have time can do that, because
I think it has to
Only
be
two.
just 2 of us, yeah, that's why.
well, I don't mean at the same time, but maybe we establish a process whereby Jane does it this month, and,
Yeah.
Melissa does it this month, and I do it this month and this month.
Well, and I
'Cause
think
it's-
probably everybody on the board is going to read all the complaints.
Yeah, that's
is,
right.
And so really all there is to it is sort of like, once we review those complaints, just to check if the tracking spreadsheet rings true to you.
Yeah,
So, because then I think we're pretty much there in terms of keeping that quarterly report up to date.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
in fact, the annual report.
Then it becomes the annual report, right?
Yeah, and then it's just a matter of kind of adding in any kind of additional stuff that we might want to say, like, recommendations that might have come out of our conversation earlier that we might want to include in that 2026 report, things like that. But, the actual tracking, hopefully, of the data would be fairly automated.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, like, thank you, and yes, let's sit down and,
Yeah,
talk
like,
about how to organize it.
To my point, basically, like, if, I don't know how I can be helpful, but if you just reach out to me and you want to maybe like meet up, I think it only can be 2 at a time.
Yeah.
But maybe just like, so I can look over your shoulder, show me what you're doing, and then maybe when it comes time to
Yeah.
actually doing the reports, we can do it together or
Absolutely,
whatever
yeah,
works for you.
I'd be very happy to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then I'll do it with you the following time.
yeah, totally.
Perfect. Thank you, Jane.
Yeah,
So you might want to, just a suggestion, adopt the first quarter report and go through the process of sharing that and take that feedback that you get from that as you finish the second report in August.
Well, it's combined right now.
oh, yeah, but I think Tom's suggesting we could break it up, because the first quarter is actually literally done,
Yeah.
so, yeah, we could do that.
Is it easy to break up?
Well, yeah, because there must be like, the date of these complaints.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be actually, well, it'd be slightly painful, because we would have to recreate all the charts, because the charts are like
Yeah.
taking everything, but not hugely painful,
I mean,
because they're in chronological order.
Do we actually run on a January 1 to December 31st quarter schedule, or are we city schedule where we're June or July 1st to June 30th?
I have seen both.
Okay. Because technically, we could be at the end of fourth quarter.
Could be, and
Yeah.
I think, Tom, I'm going to ask you to help me with that. I think in some of our previous, meetings and stuff, when we were working on annual reports previously, that we did it on the fiscal year and not or I think they did it on the calendar year, and I've seen in historical fiscal year. So
I would,
It probably-
I would stay at this point, I would suggest that you stick with the calendar year. And if you're concerned about first quarter versus third quarter, the way it's labeled, just label it by months for now until you get feedback that says, we'd like to see it a different way.
Yeah, I almost feel like if we're going to do the annual reports on a calendar year basis, then it would make sense
Oh,
to
just
do
stick
the
with the
quarterlies.
same.
But it's a good question.
Okay, so the item F1 is, I don't know if we can split it, because it doesn't, it just lists both quarters 1 and 2. So I don't know if there's really any harm in waiting until August to split this up and,
Sounds fine.
yeah, so, I don't know if we need to take a vote to approve it. We can,
You can, whatever motion you want to entertain.
Yeah.
You can do that.
so let's,
Or you can say no entertainment.
I don't think we need to call a motion. I think we can just put this back on as unfinished business next meeting, and then we can take a motion to adopt the 2 separate quarterly reports. They'll both be, we will be in the third quarter at that point in time, so they'll be done.
Wait, if we're in the third quarter at that time, do we have to split it up?
I just thought maybe for consistency, if we're gonna
Yeah.
do
Well,
it
but
on a quarter basis, maybe
Yeah,
it
I
should be
know.
quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, instead of doing a combo.
I just
For-
think it's slightly harder.
It's, yeah. I mean,
But
for
it
her to
could be
have to
good practice.
disassemble
Oh,
it. Yeah,
I
for her-
see.
I'd have to reassemble it.
Yeah.
Whereas otherwise, we could just cross out the part that we have a concern about and then move forward without doing any extra effort.
We could do that too.
For just the first one, it'll be combined.
Yeah, and then we'll get back on track.
Yeah,
Then we'll
get
be
back
good.
on track.
Okay.
I mean, God, we haven't produced a report for 30 years or something. I mean, but-
But given that we won't take a vote to adopt anything this evening, we'll include this on unfinished business for next meeting. So then we'll move, any other discussion about the quarterly report?
Only that Jane will update anything that happens between now and the end of June in that report, should anything get entered into the portal that needs to be added.
Yes,
Okay.
hopefully in collaboration with Melissa and Peggy.
Yeah, so I
Separately.
mean, for this, the one that we're going to be
Yes.
voting on. that
No,
you've
no,
already- you've done.
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. So, but we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on then to G, the officers' report. Carla, whenever you're ready.
Sorry about that. Since the last report, which was March 18, 2026, there have been 2 complaints submitted. One has been suspended, and the other was completed last week and is uploaded into the portal. 2 appeals have been submitted and are scheduled to be heard Wednesday, July 29, 2026, at 5:30 PM in the council chambers. Office activity, the City of Urbana's Juneteenth Reflection and Reverence event was held on June 16th at City Hall in this room. Other activities in the community and surrounding areas that happened throughout the week were highlighted. Some of the guests for the city event featured the Dream Academy Choir, Dr. Bobby J. Smith, U of I professor's speech on the food story of Juneteenth, and a reflection by Ward 4 Council Member Burdell Jones III. Several food trucks were on hand for guests who wanted to purchase food. The annual Welcoming Week in Urbana is scheduled for September 10 through the 19th, 2026. Plans for how the city will participate in are in development, and more information will come. The Office of Human Rights and Equity is working to develop some community engagement activities beyond the Market on the Square and Urbana Park District Neighborhood Nights, and we hope the members of CPRB will support these outreach activities once they are finalized. Urbana is hosting the Alternative Response Community Engagement Event. LEAP, which is Urbana's external advisor, will share early findings on community-centered responses to 911 calls. Then LEAP will lead an interactive community discussion with Q&A so attendees can ask questions and share ideas. It will be held at Lincoln Square Mall, Southeast Hallway, and that's behind Common Ground Food Co-op, on Saturday, June 27, 2026, from 10 to 11:30 a.m. The next community recruitment event is scheduled for Saturday, June 27th, from noon till 4 at the annual Jetty Roads Day at King Park. The OHRE, our office, along with Peggy, will staff an information table as part of our board recruitment and community engagement efforts. And then on Saturday, July 11, the OHRE is staffing a table at Market on the Square, and we would love to have you join us to help recruit for the CPRB. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you, Carla. We'll move, or, sorry, go ahead, Jean.
I just, on all these great announcements, I'll try to make it the 11th, but also, isn't there the Alternative Response Task Force meeting is tomorrow? also during the day.
Probably.
Yeah.
But I was asked specifically if I would.
Yes, no, I appreciate you bringing that one up, but just in case people wanted, like, have both, or can't make it on Saturday, so. But thank you for announcing it.
That is correct. It's at 3:30 tomorrow.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about the officer's report? Okay. With that, we'll move on to item H, the announcements. H1, this board has 2 vacancies because Ms. Katrina Kindle is reluctantly leaving this board to go serve on another board. So we appreciate the time you've been with us, Katrina, and we wish you all the best with the new board. It's the Human Rights Commission, correct?
I did try to stay on both, but they told me.
Yes, we know you. We appreciate the attempt. But yes, we do have 2 vacancies, or we now have 2 vacancies. And we would entertain anyone applying to be on the board. That is done through the website, or you can reach out via email to the board email, or to Carla or Tom, or essentially anyone, if you're interested. We'll then move to H2. The next scheduled meeting is, the next normal meeting is August 26th, but we have an appeal meeting on the 29th. But the next scheduled meeting, general meeting, is Wednesday, August 26th of this year at 5:30. And with that, I'd take a motion to,
I just want to ask one question. We were holding July 30th as well as a backup meeting. Can we release that now? I was holding July 29th and July 30th.
I don't think we've had all the people who need to be involved confirmed yet.
Okay.
So we should still hold
Please
both of
hold that
those?
for now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. But with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Well, I think someone, I can't motion it. I think someone else has to make the motion.
I move adjournment.
Second?
Okay, and we can do an affirmation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. See you at the next meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Katrina.
They don't have cookies at the other meeting.
Anybody want another cookie?
There's no guarantee that there's no cookies.